Hello everyone, xForts here, and welcome to JoJolion Chapter 61 review entitled Blue Hawaii Part 1. So starting off this review with the cover page, we have Josuke and Joshu in the background and Jobin and Norisuke in the foreground, and a little bit of text that says even on the same road, they walk differently, sort of establishing the good versus evil aspect of Josuke and Jobin and how they have very different motives in the story so far. So then into the first actual panel of the chapter, we have Dolomiti's teeth, which look fucking disgusting, and for someone like me who is very serious about their dental hygiene, this is just hard to look at, man, but I like Dolomiti so far. He's a great character. So we see him hop up and bash his mouth on a rock and one of his teeth fall out, and then we see some dialogue from Jobin saying, "You are correct, Dolomiti, thank you, that is the right answer." And what this is about is that the last time we saw these two together, Jobin was just asking Dolomiti if he could use his ability and if they could team up, and this is just Dolomiti agreeing to work together with Jobin. So we left off chapter 60 on Josuke running away from the stand ability. That is confirmed that this is Dolomiti's stand that Josuke is fighting, and its name is Blue Hawaii, so now we're just switching back over to Dolomiti and Jobin's interaction. So now on the next panel, we see Jobin do something very villain-like, going off on philosophy and monologue that a lot of villains in JoJo does, and this furthers the theory that Jobin will be the main villain for Part 8, but Jobin does not have the stand of a main villain, so this opens up a lot of theories on how Jobin's stand is going to evolve or change, or maybe if he's not even the main villain at all, because I mean, some people have said maybe Jobin isn't revealing his full stand's ability, and he's actually lying about what it does. That doesn't make sense because he wouldn't need Dolomiti if he had a powerful stand ability. He would be able to take Josuke out himself. So Jobin's stand is definitely going to need to go through some sort of evolution or transformation, or maybe even a fusion if he is going to be the main villain of Part 8. And we see even more things that reinforce this theory later on in the chapter. But for now, we see Jobin with a bit of dialogue that says, this shrine, it may have a pond, it may have frogs, it may have fish, and it may even be a paradise, but it is certainly not your blue lagoon, directing this towards Dolomiti, because in chapter 60, we saw Dolomiti talk about his blue lagoon. So in the flashback with Dolomiti in chapter 60, he says, the blue lagoon. Man, I'd really love to go there. That is my dream, to be shipwrecked, just the two of us, clinging to wreckage and drifting together. So the Blue Lagoon is pretty much just a metaphor for Dolomiti's happiness and his dreams and what he wants to achieve, and just his overall goal in life. So Jobin explains that although he is living a peaceful life at this shrine, it is not his Blue Lagoon, and Dolomiti is definitely striving for more in life, although in his current state he is not able to achieve it. And then Jobin goes over his theory that everyone is trying to achieve something better. Everyone is trying to achieve their goals as human beings, and wherever you're born at, you're set at 0. So Jobin explains that he was born into a very wealthy family and well off, but that was still his 0 point, and he is still trying to achieve better and achieve more. So say you were born into a not so wealthy and very poor family. If you achieved in your lifetime where Jobin was born at, that would be your Blue Lagoon and your happiness. But since Jobin was born at such a high status, he is always trying to achieve more. And that's really true as human beings. We are always striving for more. Even if we start in a very well-off situation, we want more than that because, human beings, we're never content. We're always, striving for more. I mean, at heart, we're really greedy people. So then on the next panel, Jobin continues talking about how we cannot let Josuke rise and we cannot let him get above his 0 point because he knows for a fact that Josuke is heading for someone that will be able to identify and find the graph Rokakaka, and that he has the directions that Norisuke gave him. So he doesn't exactly know that he's going to this plant appraisaler, but he knows he's going to someone that will be able to find it. And then he just explains to Dolomiti that we need to find that person before Josuke does because they really want their hands on the new graph Rokakaka. So then we actually see some dialogue from Dolomiti himself saying that cell phone that Josuke is carrying, does it have information on it? And Jobin's like, yeah, it does have information on it. And he's in desperate need of his Blue Hawaii. So then in this panel is where we see kind of the fundamentals of how the stand works. And it seems that you need to come in direct contact with Dolomiti or just a separated part of his body. And in this case, they're using his tooth. So Jobin never touches the tooth. And also back in chapter 59, how I pointed out that Jobin was really trying to not make contact with Dolomiti, as when he first went to the pond and Dolomiti first appeared, he snuck up behind Jobin and Jobin jumped out of the way as soon as he saw him because he came up behind him and he was like, oh, don't fucking touch me, dude. And I was like, that's weird. Why would he jump out of the way like that unless he's really dangerous? And it comes to find out that if you make contact with Dolomiti or a part of his body, you're infected with Blue Hawaii. And also another callback to chapter 60 in the flashback, the woman that I theorized that was being controlled by Blue Hawaii, I believe it's pretty much confirmed now because she was laying on top of Dolomiti. So she was completely making contact with Dolomiti, and then the next time we saw her, she was acting very similar to the people that we've seen being controlled by Blue Hawaii, but it's still kind of vague, and I'm not sure if Dolomiti in that point in time in the flashback had full control over his stand ability, because he seemed to be controlling the woman subconsciously. But back on to the present, Jobin puts the tooth inside the envelope, which is the same envelope that was given to the boy in the baseball uniform, which I guess the boy somehow made contact with the tooth inside the envelope, because as we saw, the boy was then infected by the stand, and then whoever touches the person who's infected by Blue Hawaii, it can transfer that way, as well as the boy touched the woman driving the car, and now that woman is the one after Josuke. So if you make direct contact with Dolomiti or anyone he has made contact with, you will be infected by Blue Hawaii, and I guess that's how the stand works. And what this also confirms is that Jobin is at the scene where Josuke is. I mean, Josuke is sort of running around getting away from there, but Jobin is in the town of Morio, very close to Josuke, because the boy did say that the man around the corner told me to give this to you. So I assume that as soon as Jobin puts this in the envelope, he goes into town and tells the boy and says, here, give this to Josuke. So Jobin is tracking Josuke right now, and he is aware of where he is. So then we get a line of dialogue from Dolomiti that is sort of scary, as he says, you wouldn't care if something rather unfortunate happened to this person, Josuke, yes, or the town of Morio. And what this means is that Dolomiti's Blue Hawaii potentially has the ability to infect the entire town of Morio and just completely destroy everything. And Jobin replies with, I'm fine as long as, I'm fine with anything as long as my dad doesn't find out. So Jobin doesn't seem to care about the well-being of Morio, or rather his family at all. I mean, very well, one of these people infected by Blue Lagoon could maybe attack Tsurugi, his own son, or anyone in the family, and he's like, that's fine as long as dad doesn't find out, I'm cool. So then the next line of dialogue is one of the most interesting lines out of the entire chapter. Jobin says, your Blue Lagoon depends upon the capture of the new Rokakaka. So Jobin is saying that Dolomiti's happiness, his Blue Lagoon, all depends on them obtaining this new Rokakaka. And all Jobin knows that the new Rokakaka does so far is fuses people together. So in one way or another, Dolomiti is going to find his happiness by a fusion taking place. Either a fusion with Dolomiti and another character, or Dolomiti himself with Jobin, maybe. So since Dolomiti has completely destroyed his body, and I believe a well-working body and a new body would be part of his Blue Lagoon to be back to how he was before, I think Jobin wants to fuse Dolomiti with someone in order for Dolomiti to have his body back and achieve his Blue Lagoon. But as we know how the Rokakaka works, it wouldn't work this way because he would become an entirely new person, but I'm not sure if Jobin is fully aware of this new Rokakaka's abilities. So that piece of dialogue right there opens up so many theories on what Jobin's true motives are. So now moving on from Dolomiti and Jobin, we switch back to Josuke, and he is back with his encounter with the woman who has been infected by Blue Hawaii, and it just goes on with Josuke kind of theorizing what the ability does, and that, oh, the boy made contact with the woman, now the woman's chasing me. It'd be best if I did not make any contact with this woman at all, and especially if I don't get blood on myself. So this is a pretty fun part of the chapter. It's just Josuke pretty much running away from this crazy woman chasing him that's like a zombie. So then at one point, we find a panel where Josuke takes a lid off a garbage can and just shoves it in her face, but then the next panel we see, it's soft and wet holding the garbage can, and he just shoves it back with so much force and really just destroys this woman. So then when the woman seems incapacitated and just lying on the floor, Josuke makes a break for it and says there's gotta be a user. And then we see one of the funniest panels from JoJolion yet. I don't think it's purposely meant to be funny, but it's just the pose that Josuke is running in. I just find it personally hilarious. It's just funny. Araki does some funny poses sometimes. And then there's just more theorizing of Josuke saying this is an automatic stand. How did someone else find out about the plant appraisal that I'm going towards? So Josuke has come to the conclusion that someone else knows where he's going, but they don't really. They just know he's going somewhere, and Jobin wants to get wherever he's going before him. So then Josuke turns around and he finds the woman that he knocked out earlier, chasing after him even faster. And this just really reminds me of Highway Star Arc. I mentioned this in the last chapter review, and it's Josuke running around Morio trying to get away from an automatic stand that's chasing after him. It's like Highway Star Part 8. So then eventually they get to a dead end. Josuke jumps up to a higher point of elevation, and the woman just bashes her face into a wall, and Josuke tries to climb forward, just trying to escape from her, and she actually grabs onto Josuke, and I was kind of shocked because it's like, oh shit, she made contact with him, but she didn't actually make contact with his skin. It was just his shoes. So then Josuke kicks her in the face, and she grabs his other shoe and rips him off. So now Josuke is barefoot. And there was like a giant sheet of like plastic hanging out from like the construction area where Josuke's climbing up on, and the woman attacks Josuke through the plastic. So she is grabbing him, but there's a layer of plastic in between, and eventually she like bites it, and she's like this close to his face with like her bloody tongue. And Josuke does something so cool with Soft and Wet. He uses his bubbles to just bring him an object, and it's a shovel that happened to be on the ground from the construction workers, and he just rams this shovel into this woman's mouth, and it is such a gory panel, and I love it. Josuke is really one of the most brutal JoJos we've seen so far. Like, he really doesn't care, and he is just like destroying people in the most brutal way possible from what we've seen him do in JoJolion so far. So then he just keeps going on inner monologuing about the ability and how it works and everything. And he comes to the conclusion that he cannot get touched by it because if he does, the person controlling the stand will be able to control him, and that cannot happen. So then when Josuke actually hit this woman with a shovel, she went into a glass window and she just fell into it, and Josuke was just like, all right, she's done, let me just keep going. But she actually fell into like an abandoned room with a bunch of lowlifes living there, and they're just like, what the fuck is this bitch doing? Oh, she's wearing some nice jewelry, let's steal it. So it's implied that these people are going to make contact with the woman, and then all of them are going to be infected by Blue Hawaii's ability. And then the chapter goes on. So after it's assumed that all those people made contact with her, we see Josuke running barefoot throughout Morio, and there's like a speck of blood on his foot, and it's not confirmed if it's the woman's blood or his blood because he is running through a city barefoot. So very well, it could be him cutting his foot open just by running around barefoot, or it's blood from the woman, but it doesn't seem to have any effect on him because it's just a little bit. So now when Josuke feels like he's a safe distance away from the stand and the people who are infected by it, he pulls out his phone and he goes to call Norisuke. And he's questioning himself, how does anyone know where I'm going? It was only Norisuke and I that discussed this, and he gave me the directions. And he's thinking, who was at the house at the time? And a little image pops up with Nijimura, Mei, Daya, Joshua, and Kado. And then a bigger panel appears with Kado. And so it's kind of alluded to that Josuke is suspicious of Kado knowing and her being the one attacking him. And he says the eldest son Jobin was away from the home. There's a possibility that the enemy I'm up against has connection to the Higashikata house, so it'd be dangerous to contact anyone from the house, including Norisuke. So he decides not to contact Norisuke and contact someone else. So we don't see the name, but we just see calling now, connected, and then we hear on the other end someone saying hello, and Josuke nervously says, hey, it's me. And then we flip to the next panel and it's revealed that Josuke called Yasuo. She's finally back in JoJolion. I think it's been over 2 years or close to 2 years since Yasuo has actually made an appearance in JoJolion, but she is back. And I really expected her to come back in this arc because Josuke running around Morio. I thought that he would actually just run into her on the street rather than actually contact her, but either way, this is great. Josuke and Yasuo having interactions again, and I can't wait to see these two meet up with each other. So Josuke just tells her that Yasuo, what's up, bitch? And he explains that he is being attacked by an enemy right now, and he needs her ability. And he explains that he put the tooth inside one of his soap bubbles, and he tells her the location. And he says, you need to go there with your Paisley Park ability and be able to find out where this tooth came from or who it belongs to. And Yasuo was like, all right, Josuke, we're on it. And it's like Josuke and Yasuo teaming up again, being a pair. It's just great. I love these two characters together. Then Josuke, of course, ends the phone call and continues running, and then Yasuo walks out of her house. And I like this little interaction right here. Yasuo's mom says, Yasuo, where are you going? She just says, out, and shuts the door. And I'm sure it's not sort of a reference at all, but because Yasuo is the alternate universe version of Koichi, she really reminds me of how Koichi evolved throughout Part 4. Like, Koichi was really innocent, just a really nervous little kid in the beginning of Part 4, but then after his stand evolved and he grew as well, he just became like a total badass, and now Yasuo is just like, her mom's like, where are you going? She's just like, out, like, I'm gonna just shut the door. Like, it just reminded me a little bit of how Koichi turned into more of a confident character as the story went on. And I definitely see that happening with Yasuo in just this one panel. But I'm just excited that Yasuo is back, and sooner or later, she's going to meet up with Josuke, and we're going to get to see them work together, and it's going to be great. So now Josuke is just looking around, trying to get to this planet appraiser, and he sees a lot of people, and we actually see those lowlifes that were implied that they did make contact with the woman who was infected by Blue Hawaii. And she starts walking towards Josuke, and everyone around her is like, hey, what are you doing? Like, all of the people from the group, all the lowlifes are talking to the woman lowlife that's like, hey, what are you doing walking towards him? And then Josuke says, hey, stop right there. Like, don't fucking come near me. And then another guy comes up behind Josuke, and it's not really a tense situation if you were an outsider looking in, but since Josuke is trying to avoid a contact with anyone, he's like really tense right now because he's in a big crowd. But it actually turns out that the people weren't after him at all, and they were just walking by. But Josuke is like just really nervous and really trying to avoid everyone, but it's nothing really serious is happening. He's just in a crowd of people, and it just shows that he really needs to avoid contact. And I like this little piece of dialogue that Araki adds. Crowds are dangerous. Like, avoid crowds, Josuke. So, yeah, it just shows that anyone now in Morio can be affected by Blue Lagoon, and he really has to avoid contact with anyone at this point. And that is the end of the chapter. So that was chapter 61. I think the most important part of this chapter was in the beginning with Dolomiti and Jobin's interactions and them talking about what they want to do with the Rokakaka and how Dolomiti's Blue Lagoon depends on their acquiring the Rokakaka, the new grafted one that fuses people together. And that is just, that so many theories can spawn in just from that one piece of dialogue. So theories for next chapter, we're probably just going to see more Yasuo Josuke stuff, which is going to be great. And maybe this arc will conclude. I could definitely see this being a 3-part arc so far, but hopefully at some point Jobin reveals himself and he kind of gets in a one-on-one encounter with Josuke. That would be interesting to see, but for now, we just gotta wait. So definitely, I really enjoyed chapter 61. Like I said, it was a really dense chapter, and a lot happened in it. So thank you guys for watching this video. Let me know in the comments down below any theories that you guys have for chapter 62 that we'll see next. But as of now, I'm really just excited to see who the main villain of this part is going to be, and I really just want to see who reaches this plant appraisal first, and who gets their hand on the new grafted Rokakaka first, Josuke or Jobin. So that's going to be it for chapter 61. Thank you guys for watching the video. Like if I fought your boredom, or if you just enjoyed, and subscribe for, of course, more videos. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.
Now December